Dictator Biden's new orders on gun control, America's failure to fight communism, and much more coming up on today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MAGA Fight. I am Mike, joined again this week by the lovely Katie. How you doing today?
What's up, everyone? I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Man, we are getting a nice little heat wave cooking up in here in New York, right?
That's nice.
A little warm, as you can see. I had to shed all that winter hair. So, but it's nice. It's real nice. At first, I thought maybe it was a false spring. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but it's been pretty consistently nice. I think spring's actually here. All right. So, as always, we are available on YouTube, Rumble. Some new ones also now, Google Podcast, Stitcher, iHeart, Amazon Music, Spotify, so you can catch us all those places. Pretty much every place that a podcast or show is available. And I myself highly recommend the audio version. It's perfect. It's, what podcasts were meant for. Just plug a bud in your ear as you at work or going about your day or chores or whatever. Yep. It's my preferred means of consumption of podcasts. So highly recommend it. But as always, glad to have you here on YouTube and Rumble as well. Take a second, hit that like button. That really helps us out being a small channel. Everyone counts. So we'll get started today with COVID-19. We'll get that talked about and out of the way. Still going.
Yeah.
Still going. Good old New York. This is what we're gonna do now.
14 months into the 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, and stop the spread.
14 months.
We've got ads going now, like the one we were watching earlier, where it's people in the Google search bar and they're deleting, pandemic family activities or this and that, and saying, "Oh, get back to fun," and then it ends with, of course, my nearest vaccination spot or whatever, and then it's like, get back to normal and the things we love. No, it's not that at all. There they go, hyping it up again when they've already told us that nope, this is going to need to continue even after vaccines. And watch as it comes out, and I've been arguing this point on social media and stuff too. It's that these vaccines, while commendable that we got them out so quick and everything, and Operation Warp Speed and all that good stuff, but essentially it's going to be like, I've been thinking, a glorified flu shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where you'll get it every year. If they got the strain right, then maybe there's a high probability of you not getting it, but pretty much they'll just, for the most part, it might just be, you'll be less likely to have a severe case or something like that. It's not gonna be a vaccine. A vaccine prevents a disease. You're cured for life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like the ones that we get when we're babies and all that.
Like
It'll be an inoculation. You know what I mean? That's what it'll be. You're still gonna have to wear 3 masks, and you're still gonna have to be socially distanced, and everything's gonna have to be 50% or 25%. If you live in one of these whole blue states like New York, but if you live in Texas or one of them other places, man, we envy you.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, and on that point, we've got reports now of 246 fully vaccinated people in Michigan testing positive for COVID more than 2 weeks after their second shot. So they were, fully vaccinated. Now, there's still some, they still have ongoing investigations into it, and they're still looking at it on a case-by-case basis. So all the facts aren't in yet. They're still digging deeper on it. But they do have, almost 250 fully vaccinated people that have tested positive. 3 of those actually died, although excuse me, looking more into those 3 deaths, it may look like they may have died, within the 2 weeks after the second shot,
Right.
or just, and I got the impression that maybe the vaccine was given to at least 2 out of those 3, just as like a last course, like, option, trying to, but so we'll find out about that. But I think that we're gonna see more of this, and this is along the lines that it's gonna end up following, like we were just saying, where it'll end up being a yearly inoculation and all that other good stuff, and the COVID passports and stuff like that they're pitching at us now. Not only are they unconstitutional and ridiculous and should just be fought against and resisted, just
Right.
on those grounds alone,
Mm-hmm.
but also the tech behind COVID passports is dangerous. Like, we thought it was bad when the NSA's mass surveillance program came out and all that, but this is gonna be even worse than that. It's more mass data collection by government and big tech. It's more tracking everybody and what they're doing, which helps feed into, like programs similar to China's social score. You know what I mean? This is like building the foundation of that kind of system and that kind of using tech in that kind of way against the population. So, I mean, we really need to fight against it.
Right. It's almost like they're gonna like microchip us. Like, come on.
I mean, pretty much what it's like. I've always said about that argument. I think that's already happened because, they always said, well, they're going to microchip us, man. Whatever they're doing to dogs now, they're going to do to
Right.
us within 10 years. And it's like, well, we're already all carrying around our cell phone at us at all times.
That is true.
You know what I mean? Constantly being tracked. All our data's on there and our devices. That's already happened. It wasn't getting implanted by the chip. It was them giving you a chip that you wanted to carry around all day.
Right,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
That is true.
They make it voluntary. I mean, the best way to con somebody is to make them think it was their idea in the first place, and they're very good at that. Another point on that is that tech can also be used against you in ways that maybe we don't quite see yet or aren't quite thinking about yet. For example, I mean, imagine like your life insurance not paying out to your family after you pass away because they found some kind of health data or some kind of data that they could use against you. I mean, we all know how these companies are. If they can find any way to weasel out of it, they will. And they'll call it null and void. And I mean, that's just one example. There's going to be a lot of unforeseen ways that we're not even thinking about, that we're not even imagining that will happen. Again, tied with that, we also the surge at the southern border. We know now that most of those people coming through the border are not being tested for COVID.
Right.
You know what I mean? Very few of them are, and catch and release on steroids is going on, and I can already see it happening where that surge at the southern border and all of those migrants not being tested is going to cause a spike, if even a small spike, in Texas, and the Democrats are not going to be able to wait to blame it on them reopening. I mean, they're already waiting with bated breath.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so moving on from COVID now. Got a nice little article to get us going. This will get the blood pumping, get us all fired up. Our friends at the Times there. And this one is Biden steps up efforts to combat domestic terrorism. Washington, the Biden administration is stepping up efforts to combat domestic extremism, increasing funding to prevent attacks, weighing strategies historically used against foreign terrorist groups, and more openly warning the public about the threat. The attempts to more assertively grapple with the potential for violence from white supremacists and militias are a shift from President Donald J. Trump's pressure on federal agencies to divert resources to target the Antifa movement and leftist groups, despite the conclusion by law enforcement authorities that far-right and militia violence was far more serious threat. And here we go. Already, they got it. So Biden being the reasonable one now is going to shift all attention into fighting, white domestic terrorism and militias. Unlike Donald Trump, who is just going after poor peaceful protesters, because we all know that it's the white domestic terrorists that are the threat. Even though the protesters are the ones that burn all the cities and
right. I was gonna.
Here we go, folks. This is what, their arguments don't have to make sense. They're just doing it, and they just say whatever, and we sit here and we take them seriously, and then we try to debate them on their stupid points. Like, logic is going to make sense to these people. No, they're just going to do it. President Biden's approach also continues a slow acknowledgement that, especially after the Capitol riot on January 6th, the federal government needs to put more attention and money into tracking and heading off threats from inside the United States after 2 decades in which it made foreign terrorism the security priority. Yep. So not only don't worry about peaceful protesters, but, don't worry about the Middle East. Yeah. Don't worry about ISIS.
Don't worry about ISIS coming back. It's fine.
Yeah. Don't worry about nobody is a threat other than these white domestic terrorists. Like this one right here.
Yeah.
Just saying. Can I get a background check? In an intelligence report delivered to Congress last month, the administration labeled white supremacists and militia groups as top national security threats. The White House is also discussing with members of Congress the possibility of new domestic terrorism legislation and executive orders to update the criteria of terrorism watch lists to potentially include more homegrown extremists. They're expanding the list of us, guys. I mean, if you disagree with them, you are the worst terrorist threat known to the country right now.
Yeah, watch out.
I mean, even though it wasn't Colorado, that was Muslim left wing extremist. Right?
It was.
Oh,
yes,
right,
yes,
right.
You
right.
are correct.
And then, just last week there was another shooting in Maryland with Anyway, yeah, it's the white domestic terrorist. That's the one we got to worry about, guys. Let's stay focused. The Homeland Security Department has begun a review of how it handles domestic extremism. For the first time this year, the department designated domestic extremism as a national priority area, requiring that 7.5% of the billions in grant funds be spent on combating it. Mr. Biden bolstered a team focusing on domestic extremism at the National Security Council that had been depleted in the past 4 years, detailing officials from the Justice Department, the FBI, and the National Counterterrorism Center, according to senior administration officials. Attorney General Merrick B. Garland, aren't we so glad to have him in there now, who helped investigate the 95 Oklahoma City bombing, said the Justice Department would also make domestic extremism a top priority. So, I mean, there it is in a nutshell, blah, blah, blah. It's going to go on and keep talking mumbo jumbo. As always, I will have this article along with sources and all that good stuff linked in the description. You can check it out there all for yourself. Oh, crap. And we're back. So, basically, yeah. So, one rowdy day at the Capitol versus months of riots and burning and assaults and beatings and everything else that was going on by Antifa and BLM. And, one rowdy day at the Capitol versus that where, mind you, nothing was set on fire. And the only person killed was one of the Trump supporters, Ashley Babbitt.
Right.
So, and they've tried pinning these other couple deaths, you know what I mean? But then we found out, that was like cardiac arrest or drug overdose, and they say they're still trying to look into that one officer one. But the fact is, only one person was killed in the Capitol riot, and that was Ashley Babbitt.
Their hypocrisy makes my blood boil.
As always, and that goes back to what we were saying during the article about they're just gonna do it. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what they say because they're just talking out their ass end because they're just going to push forward with what they want to do, and it doesn't matter their reasoning, it doesn't matter their justification. They're just going to push forward, and they're just going to do it, and they're unified in that goal. And this is why we're continually losing the culture and everything else, is because we sit there and we try to argue back against it with logic and common sense, because we're not and this all plays into America's failure as a country, as a people, to recognize and combat communism. You know what I mean? So I was a big fan of Rush. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the last 4 years I found him, about 5 years ago now. And, he had an amazing impact on my politics and the way I thought about things. And, as any of his listeners will know, one of the things he always said is that people still don't understand who the left is. And, toward the end there, I feel like the way he talked about it, I really think that he considered that maybe a failure on his part.
Yeah.
Because he used to say, you know what I mean? And he talked about how he considered that a failure of his because he felt like people still didn't understand who the left is. And I mean, with everything you see them doing, if it's not blatantly obvious by this point, I mean, I think that's a lot of it is people just, not really paying attention or not really caring or, but hopefully we can try to change that. And the left is destroying America because the left wants to destroy America as founded. You know what I mean? That's why they're attacking the history. That's why they're attacking our figures. That's why they're trying to take down the Second Amendment, as we'll talk about later with, Biden's new orders on gun control and all that shit. It's their goal. It's what they are striving to do. And we need to recognize it and we need to combat it.
Yeah, they pretty much think it's racist that it's founding, and they want to tear it down and build up a whole new country.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they attack the country as founded from day one. That's a common tactic, because if you tear down the history, if you tear down what unites the civilization together as a people, then you can just burn it to the ground and start all over again. You know what I mean? Under their new system, which we see it. It's going to be authoritarianism, communism. It's exactly what they're going for. We got the media right now is like, we were talking about this earlier today and whatnot. Like communist countries having state media, and how our media is just they're a voluntary state media, like a bunch of retards. You know what I mean? That's your one goal. So, newsflash, journalists, what journalism is supposed to be is when the government says, no, the media cannot tour the border and investigate it right now.
Want to go to the border and find out what the hell's going on.
Exactly. Thank you. That's ding, ding, ding. There's your answer right there. The areas that they try to hide and the things that they try to hide, that's what you're supposed to go shed light on. But no, instead we'll just be willing participants and we'll just volunteer to be the state media, because then we're part of the club, right? No? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'll still tell my friends I'm part of the club, I'm real good friends with the government. I don't know why I'll put that on my blue check mark. It's like It's like so like the COVID masks and the lockdowns. That didn't fall. They like to say that it's a shame that it came to fall along political lines. It didn't fall along political lines. It fell along Democrats and the left, and they said that's what we're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else said, "Hold on now, I don't think that's such a good idea." Nope, that's what we're doing, and we just did it. You know, it's not just Trump supporters that don't believe in masks and COVID passports and stuff. That's what the libertarians and independents and third parties believe too, or at least some of them, most of them, because libertarians, you all need to pick a lane, but for the most part. So that's why I say it was
Right.
Democrats versus everybody else.
I talk to people at work who were on all sides of politics, who are sick of wearing masks and who are sick of not being able to see families, and you know what I mean, like people on all sides of all.
Exactly. Right. And it's really gotten, you see, you can see it now. Everybody has COVID fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's getting to the point where, I think like you were just kind of hinting to, where some people maybe even on the left side of things are starting to, geez, I don't know. I don't know how long I can keep rooting for this shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but, people in the middle, often the people that are non-political, and they claim they're in the middle, you'll often see them actually go left, and they'll just agree with the left. So those will be the people, they're not really politically active, you know what I mean? But yeah, we should wear masks, and yeah, we should get vaccinated. And those people, they're not in the middle. They're just non-political people who don't want their social life and private life affected by something that they don't care about anyway, which is politics. And they don't, so really it's like a form of fear and submission, you know what I mean, where they go along to get along, that kind of thing. And I think, that's your people in the so-called middle, or your non-political people in the middle. And, another thing is when it comes to politicians, don't be fooled by these so-called moderate Dems. We see a lot of that. We see a lot of Democrats that like to claim to be like an old school Democrat or a moderate Democrat. Hell, Biden claimed to be a moderate Democrat
Right.
in the primaries. He was running through there.
Now look at what he's doing.
Right. Yeah, and now he's the most left. Like every time somebody says something, he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it right away because nobody's more progressive than me." Tell you what? Huh? What? Where? I mean, Oh, hey, it's my niece's sister. Hey, wait. Oh, no, wait. So, but don't be fooled by the so-called moderate Dems, because they're not moderate. They're just talking out their ass. That's why you never see them fighting against their party with anything, or they might give a little bit of lip service here or there, but they will vote yes every time Nancy Pelosi tells them to vote yes on something, and they will be there and they will pull the line.
Yep.
And they will do as their party wants them to do. There was an article this week. At least 3 House Dems returned donations from AOC, fearing funds could hurt chances with swing voters. Now, this article, which, again, I'll link it in the description so you can read it if you want, it basically goes on to say, like, all these 3 moderate Democrats, who are in swing districts or states or whatever, they just noticed one day that, they had some AOC money in there. And they were like, "Oh, well, that can't be right. You know what? Actually, let me give this back, because I don't want anybody to see that I'm taking donations from AOC, because then they won't believe me that I'm moderate, even though my voting record is very consistent with AOC's voting record. But as long as I can say that I turned down so and these so-called moderates, they'll continue to try to distance themselves from, the socialist and communist wing of the party, which is the whole party, and they themselves are as well. But they're gonna try to keep distancing themselves, and they've been doing that since, the first presidential primary in 2020, starting at the end of
Mm-hmm.
2019, where right away you saw the ones that were trying to be moderate that were,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, no, I don't really like socialism. And no, I wouldn't call myself a socialist, but when the socialists and communists raised their hand, I also had my hand raised. And I agree with, I vote with everything they vote with. But anyway, no, I'm moderate. I don't like that. I don't believe in it. The one thing that you have to understand with, communism, Marxism, whatever they want to call it, um, you're not going to be able to break it down logically, because the one thing you have to understand for it to make sense is that communism is a religion. Just like Rush used to say, just like, people who understand the left and what they are, communism, Marxism, it is a religion. That's why you see the behavior that you do with pseudoscience like climate
Mm-hmm.
change and all that other stuff, and it is a religion to them. It is not just some agenda or policy they want to do. You know what I mean? It is very much a religion. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other day. We fought harder to keep other countries free of communism than we fought for our own.
Right.
Look at
Korea.
Vietnam, Korea,
Yep.
all that stuff, and it used to be common knowledge back then. The Red
Mm-hmm.
Scare and everything, and but now we just you know try to
Right.
debate it. And like I've said many many times, that is my hope for this channel. That's why I started it. That's what I want it to be. I want to make a place where we can build a community of
Mm-hmm.
like-minded people. You know what I mean? That can help in the organization and getting the word out and all that. So, um, trying to find out or organize protests and events and make sure that we're out there and giving it to them. And that's essentially what I want this channel to be. You know what I mean? It gives good info, and I want it to be entertaining and all that too. And I'll continue to try to get better. Literally learning as you're flying the plane in the air. But that's the fun in it. But that's what I want this community to be. You know, and I think that really started with like when we went to the MAGA rallies in DC
Mm-hmm.
and the protests and all that. It
Yeah.
was like, man, it's a whole another level when you're actually there at an event like
Mm-hmm.
that, something big, with all like-minded people and shared goals, and actually participating and trying to do what you can do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And not only that, but to see DC and the monuments
Oh
and
yeah.
stay at the hotels and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And it was a big sacrifice because we're just paycheck to paycheck people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We don't have random road trip money.
Right.
So we really had to sacrifice and plan and swing things to do that. But we're glad we did.
And to do it again.
Right,
I
in a
think that's
heartbeat,
what.
and we will do it again.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's what we're gonna do with this
Yeah.
channel.
I think a lot of people are afraid to like leave their comfort zone.
Right.
I think that
Well,
has a lot to do with it.
essentially, that's it. It's hard to feel the alarm bells, and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to take action, especially if it's an action that requires a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that when you're comfortable and you don't feel an urgent danger.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that is, I've talked about that before. That is a big problem in America. A big reason why this has been able to get in and fester the way it has over the last 20 years is that we're a very wealthy nation and everybody's pretty damn comfortable. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Where even your paycheck to paycheck people like us, even the people on the bottom end, still live better than many do in other places around
Yep.
the world. You know what I mean? So that's a big part of it. So Biden's executive orders on gun control. So he did a little presser, did his little talk,
Mm-hmm.
called it the AFT, referring to the
What,
ATF.
what's
Just
the AFT? I don't know.
yeah, more classic Biden gaffes. And he put out his orders for banning ghost guns, national red flag laws, wants to ban pistol braces, background checks at gun shows, yada yada yada. The list goes on. And one of the things that he said during that really caught my ear was he said no amendment to the Constitution is absolute, referring to the Second Amendment. And
Correct
but
me if I'm wrong, but doesn't a change to a change to an amendment have to go through the House and the Senate and be doesn't it how can he just write executive orders for all these gun laws when it is our Second Amendment right to bear arms?
well, because like we were just talking about with the left, they're just going to do it. And they're gonna fight like hell to get away with it, and you know what I mean. The founding papers are just a piece. They're just pieces of paper. You know what I mean.
Right.
They don't actually. The only thing that protects them is the people. We the people. That's what we're here for. That's literally what the Second Amendment is for. It's not for just self-defense. It's not just for hunting. It's not just
Right.
for any of that stuff. The thing nobody wants to talk about is it's also to make sure that we, the people,
Mm-hmm.
can defend ourselves from a tyrannical government and that we have that shared power. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So, essentially, that's why they go after it so hard, because once they take that away, then it's good night. It's all over.
Right.
And they don't even have to, and they're going to be coming hard, but they don't even have to outright ban it. They can just legislate it and to the point where it's ineffective. Because that's what you see them going after the most is like the attachments and the features and
Right.
this and that and bump stocks and pistol braces and all that side stuff and little pieces of metal that do this or don't do that. And that's what you see them going after and banning and legislating. So if they just do that, if they just attack it from all sides until the weapon that you are left with, allowed to carry, is not effective, you know what I mean?
Right.
Then that goal,
Right.
and the left has been arguing for the last year now, at least consistently, that the Second Amendment in the modern day is null and void. We already talked about, the case in, I forget what state it was now, but they deemed that the Second Amendment the well-regulated militia referred to the National Guard, and therefore it's null and void in the modern day, and that, yes, people can bear arms, but under heavy restrictions and limitations and all that good stuff. And you just see more continuation of that now with Biden, with these new executive orders. And he said no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. And then a little later on, he also said, from the very beginning, you couldn't own any gun you wanted to. And that's false.
Right.
That's absolutely false. Back in, the colonial days and all that good stuff. And, you owned what you owned. And it was the same firearms and all of that the militaries and militias and everybody else had use of. For instance, let's take like cannons. You know what I mean? There were private merchants and whatnot that bought cannons and used them on their ships to protect themselves from pirates who may also have cannons. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would be considered a military level weapon, and common merchants had it to protect their ships because it was the best tool, because it's what the pirates might have, it's what's available, and they needed to be able to match that threat to ensure that their goods would arrive wherever they were trying to take it. You know what I mean? So again, they just talk out their ass. They say shit that isn't true. They could be fact checked in a second.
Right.
But nobody pushes back on it. Or, very few. The very few of us. But that's what we're always working towards.
And if I remember correctly, speaking of Biden saying no amendment to the Constitution is absolute, back in high school, I do believe I learned that the first 10 cannot be amended. That's why they are called the Bill of Rights.
I believe you're right. Are we right? Are the first 10 not able to be amended, and that's why they're in the Bill of Rights? Comment. All activity helps small channels. So that's what we can do for this week. Biden also said something that was very concerning. He said that federal government will fund anti-gun legislation and efforts at local levels. So let's say that like town or city or whatever, like the city of Rochester, let's say that they wanted to pass some more, gun legislation, which I'm sure they're all eager to do. Essentially, the federal government will fund all those efforts. So you just
Right.
tell them, hey, I want to make some more gun laws, and they'll send you the check and they'll fund it. And that to me is very scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we're going to see a lot of stuff happening at the local level, and we're really going to have to be paying attention, and we will be doing our best on this side of things. Biden also said, if he could have one favor from God, if the Lord was to be like, Joe, you get just one, what's it going to be? He said that his one would be to end legal immunity for gun manufacturers. So his one wish from God would be to make it so that firearms manufacturers like Remington, Mossberg, all that could be held legally liable and sued every time somebody dies of a gunshot wound.
That's stupid.
What more can you say than that, folks?
What?
Right. That's the natural reaction to everything. Oh, God, that's so stupid. We really got to argue against this again.
I have no other words.
Do we really got to do this again? All right. Guess we're doing this again. So, yeah, here we go. Let's hold nail manufacturers accountable every time somebody steps on a nail, or
right.
let's hold baseball bat manufacturers liable for
every
any time somebody beats with a baseball bat, and so on and so forth. All the stupid stuff, because that's exactly what this is stupid. And then, the great Attorney General Garland that just got in, we covered him, remember? Stepped up afterwards, and he said that the DOJ will spend $1 billion in grants for evidence-based intervention strategies, such as paying former criminals to act as violence interrupters. Katie, what the hell is a violence interrupter?
I was just going to ask that. I thought maybe you knew.
No. I imagine, like two gangs squaring up, like, gangs in New York. Leonardo DiCaprio's there.
That was good.
With the other guy, and, they line up there and they're getting ready to go at it. And then all of a sudden, guy steps in, and if I could just interrupt real quick. Could we not? Is this really necessary, guys? And then he gets taken out, and then they go about their day, fight each other. I don't really understand that. That's what comes to mind when
criminals?
Paying former criminals to act as violence interrupters. I mean, is that somebody you want to put in that situation? I mean, didn't they get in trouble the last time around?
It's probably not.
I don't know. We'll see where it goes, like everything else. But
it's a head scratcher.
They're gonna set aside $1 billion $1 billion for these grants, and they're gonna make a bunch of violence interrupters. For evidence-based intervention strategies. And of course, Biden also urged doing another assault weapons ban and talked about how great it was that he did the first assault weapons ban from 94 to '04, and he did it, so now we can do it. And if he could get it done, then we can get it done. And God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. And this is, of course, we're only, what are we, 4 months in now?
Yep.
January, February,
Yep. Just about.
February, March, April. 3 months in. Just about. In another week or so. And we're already here. This is just the beginning. And we knew it was coming. We've known it was coming all during the election, all during everything else. We should be more than ready for it. And as it's starting to happen now, we need to be out hammering back against it. And, like we discussed before, arguing the merits on logic and common sense isn't going to work, because that's not their goal, is to have meaningful debate and to pick the best option. Right. Their goal is to carry out their agenda. Everyone else be damned. For one of our last segments today, I figure we'll talk about boycotts a little bit. Yeah. So, as most of you saw, this last week, Trump called for a boycott of the MLB after they announced that they were leaving Georgia because of the new voting laws are racist, because they require that people have an identification card. Not just black people, but everybody. Everybody needs to have an. But it's disproportionately hard against a segment of the population, because they just, come on, guy, you can't expect them to be able to get identification cards, is what the Democrats say. So, it sounds a little, I'm sick of hearing the word, so, I can't use the R word anymore. Remember back in the day, remember the before 4 times when you would go like weeks on end without hearing the word racist? Remember that?
Yeah.
That was, some good reminiscing. Those were good days back then. You might go weeks, you might go months, and nobody ever said anything about racism. It's funny. But now, with the left side identity politics and everyone being broken up into groups, now everything's racist, and we have to talk about racism every single day. Every single day. There's not a day that goes by that it's not a word in the headlines. So Trump called for the boycotts of the MLB. And, naturally my first thought was, people still watch that? Is that like...
Yeah, some do.
That's still a thing?
Yeah.
Baseball? Baseball? All right. They are like, I think I want to say they are like, as far as like player salaries go, I think they're maybe only second to the NFL, or they might even beat the NFL in some cases. I'm not sure, but
the highest paid athletes.
I know that, baseball players are ridiculously paid for a sport that is going the way of the NASCAR. So, and that's funny, because that's, like one of the debates with, gender equality is that women athletes don't get paid as much as male athletes.
Right.
Well, that's because, sad to say, nobody's going to watch women's sports. You know what I mean? It's just not a huge in-demand thing. It's not a moneymaker. It's not a moneymaker. Where, football is a huge moneymaker. So, the Major League Baseball would be one argument to where I could say, okay, the facts don't really line up here, because I don't see the viewership and merchandise sales that justify, these salaries. But then again, I know baseball isn't. It's not dead. Just like NASCAR isn't either. But they are both shells of their former self. I can tell you that, and I don't watch neither. So
Used to.
It used to. Back in the day, it used to be good.
Yeah,
Back in the day, but
NASCAR.
that is a perfect example of a sport that committed suicide
Yeah.
with just, insider shit and rigging it for only the charter drivers
Mm-hmm.
and overemphasis on sponsors, and then they could only use Goodyear tires, which have been shit time and time and time again because there's no competition. And it's a sport that's committed suicide. It's a shell of its former self, just like Major League Baseball. But and right off the bat, as far as boycotts are concerned, and the rights relationship to it, I'm glad that the new conservatives, like I like to say, which would include us and a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
people that kind of jumped on in the Trump era, um, you know, um, are all about boycotts, and we understand boycotts, and we aren't afraid to use them. But one of the old mantras, you'll still hear this from the old school conservatives and Republicans, is they'll say, "Well, the right doesn't boycott. We respect business, and we're business people, and blah 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 blah." And that's, again, it's outdated, and it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The boycotts have been used since before our founding, going back to um, the Boston Tea Party, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and even before them. But the Boston Tea Party is a great example because, everybody knows the story of the Boston Tea Party. But what a lot of people don't know is the afterwards, after that night, after they threw the tea off the boats and all that good stuff, they boycotted all the imported tea that was sold by the British East India Company. Boycotted it. Would not allow it. Would not allow the ships to docks. Turned them around. We're not buying that crap. Full on boycott of British East India Company, which at the time was the supplier of tea.
Mm-hmm.
And so they boycotted that. Wouldn't accept it at the ports anymore, and they actually started smuggling in Dutch tea. So, and it worked. The British East India Company ended up with like millions of pounds of surplus
Mm-hmm.
tea that they were unable to sell. At one point, they were even looking at possible bankruptcy. I mean, it was effective and it worked. And, boycotts are an incredibly strong tool
Mm-hmm.
that, it's a very effective tool for giving people a voice. The power of your dollar in buying things. It says something, and it's one of the best tools that you can utilize.
I almost want it to, like, with like social media, with all that going on right now with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Google, they're censoring our point of view. And people like myself, I no longer use Facebook. I have boycotted Facebook and started using other social media apps. Like, I almost kind of want to see Facebook and Twitter go under.
Right. It would be great. I mean, unfortunately, there's too much. There's too much of a left, and they're
Right.
set in now, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, even on our side, that'll continue using these things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm the same. I don't use them anymore. The sites I am on are Parlor and
Yep.
Clout Hub. Won't use Twitter anymore. That's
Yep.
why we don't have our social media names flashing all over the screen and saying follow us here and follow us there,
Because we don't
because
have it.
we're not there. And that's also why, for this platform, for this community that we're trying to build, that's also why we did it the way we did it. That's also why, I chose the podcast format, and I started learning how to do podcasts and learning how to do tech. I mean, I hadn't touched a computer really since my days in high school. You know what
Right.
I mean? So, and then it was just, and of course, I'm the kind of person that I only learn by doing. I can read 100 things on the topic. I can learn a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, and until I get my hands in there and do it, I'm not really learning too much. Um, so, but that's why we did this in this format, and that's why we tried to build a podcast, that's everywhere, that's, on Stitcher and Google and YouTube, because we don't want to rely on Google. We don't want to
Right.
rely on YouTube. You know what I
Right.
mean? We fully understand how those places are behaving and what the odds of, right now nothing's going to happen because
Right.
we just started. You know what I mean? And the stuff doesn't happen overnight. It can take years to build a community or something. You know what I mean? Look at any top person that you see now. They didn't just start a few months ago. They've been doing it
Right.
for, in most
Years.
cases, years. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so, but that's why we did it that way, because we understand, and no matter what, we're gonna make sure that we're available when the time comes, regardless of who drops us or does what or censors. That's why eventually we will also have, dedicated website and
Mm-hmm.
email list to stay in contact with everybody and all that good stuff. So the boycott is an incredibly powerful tool and one that should really be used. Old school Republicans, one of the big turnoffs from the party, I know for me and probably a lot of my generation coming up, was always they've always had like this toxic relationship with big business.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And now we see that going, even though they've always claimed to want to be the guys of small government, but they've never said that about business. You know what I mean? And they've always had this kind of toxic relationship. But now we see that with the left, where they're the ones in cahoots with Silicon Valley, but
Mm-hmm.
don't be fooled. It's also the Republicans, because big business loves big government and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
They fund each other. I mean, you know what I mean? The government gives grants and corporate welfare and freebies to them in return for all the donations and campaign funding that they gave them the year before. And it goes back, and it's really a corrupt system. So, and that just, again, when I hear those old outdated, you know, mantras like conservatives don't boycott, ugh, the hell we
Yeah.
don't. All right, and moving on to our leftovers today. One of the things that caught me was not too long ago, Mitch McConnell speaking there said that he supports Fauci because they have to take advice from somebody, and Fauci's as good as any.
Can we get a second opinion?
Right. Or maybe a couple more opinions, but at least a second opinion.
You know, I like how you do that for your individual health. If you don't agree with the doctor that you have, like, can America get a second opinion?
Right. I thought, well, this was supposed to be the whole point of our democratic style of republic that we have here. You know what I mean? With
Right.
the three branches of government and all that good stuff. I mean, and it's one thing. Of course, you're gonna have advisors. And it's one thing, but he's not advising. He's dictating.
Right.
He says something, and
And
they all
we're
just go
supposed to
with it,
follow
and
it.
that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and since when do doctors dictate or make economic decisions?
Right.
You know what I mean? If you go see your private hair physician, he gives you health advice. Oh, you really shouldn't smoke. Oh, you really should drink less. Oh, you really
Right.
should maybe lose a few pounds. That's it. You know what? Actually, starting right now, it's flu season. You can't have any more than 2 people over at your house, and
Right.
and they have to be tested for flu before they come over too. I mean, you tell them to go bleep.
Right.
Who would ever? That's not what they do. I mean, what next? Are we gonna have them making military decisions for us? You know what I mean? He's a doctor, so he must know everything about every topic. No, they don't. They don't know economics because they're not economists. You know what I mean? They might know some about it, but not. They should never do more than advise. And right
Right.
now, he's way beyond an advisor.
Right.
He says it, and they do it. And if that's the case, then what's the point of having the government if they're just gonna jump and do whatever this one guy tells them to? Also, in our leftovers today, we have the lovely interview of Hunter Biden that they did to help him launch his new book.
What they
And
call it? A window into his soul? Or
America's Soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
America's soul.
Yeah, CNN Brian Skelter, or one of them. Maybe it was one of the chicks over there. I don't really remember, but I do. There was one CNN anchor that was Hunter's story is a window into America's soul. It's so touching and profound. And they're just fawning all over him, and they can't eat up enough of that Parmesan cheese off the carpet that he was smoking.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's because we're not smoking Parmesan cheese.
I tell you, I mean, it's good on spaghetti, so why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be good on some crust? Right. I mean, flavor. So the media's fawning over him, as we knew they would, and it's just hilarious to watch. Luckily, it doesn't have any effect on policy or anything. Good story to laugh at. Now, another thing is strategists keep talking about the Republican Party needing to reach out to minority communities more. And yes, that's true. But there's not, if what they mean by that is that they need to start emulating some of the Democratic strategies and just, start planning free checks all the time and free this and free that, well then, again, now there's no reason for you, you know what I mean? Because now you're just doing exactly what they're doing, which is what you're supposed to be against in the first place. And, you cannot make it to where you're just fighting over who's offering the most free stuff and who's going to make everything the most effortless. You know what I mean? Because then at the end of the day, we're not going to have anything that we can count on or believe in. You know what I mean? Because it's all going to be like 2020. But of course, the strategists, keep saying that we ignore those segments of the population too much, and the party needs to do this and the party needs to do that. That's not going to work, and it wouldn't have worked for me. You know what I mean? I wasn't always a heavy conservative. I still have a lot of issues with the Republican Party and Republicans in general, especially the old school ones. It's not perfect, but you got to get involved and look at what happened since 2016 with the whole MAGA movement. I mean, the entire party has been reformed. You know what I mean? It's been made more modern. It's got a lot new, fresh blood in it now, and it's on its way to being a much better party than it was yesterday. But, I mean, if we just throw that away now, and now we just start trying to see who can be the most socialist and who can promise the most free shit, then we're going to lose it real quick. And like I was just saying, it wouldn't have worked for us. I wasn't always into the politics as much. And back when I wasn't, having the Republicans also promising free money and everything wouldn't have mattered to me. One bit. That's not, because you're both saying the same shit. You know what I mean? And maybe I was already leaning one way already, so I'm probably just going to keep leaning that way. And what you're saying doesn't matter. What did finally catch my attention, and what did finally actually, wake me up and red pill me, so to speak, and, make me want to pay attention and find out more and learn more and become more involved in all that good stuff. What did finally do that for me was the run up to the 2016 election and Hillary Clinton and all the extreme measures that we had seen in the second term of Obama. Like I said, I supported him his first term when he ran for president the first time. And we've also talked about how there is a huge portion of Trump supporters who are also first term Obama voters. And that's because really they both had a very similar message. It was hope and change in the case of Obama.
Yep.
And make America great again in the case of Trump. And the big difference ended up being that one of them meant it and one of them was just being a politician.
Yep.
And one of them was, very left-wing, although, to today's standards, at the time it was very left-wing, but today's standards it'd be considered moderate. But regardless of the fact, that's what finally got my attention, and I think it's going to be the same for other people. You know what I mean? So let the Democrats make their mistakes. Don't try to chase them down that dead end. Because, yeah, while it might work for some portions of the population, it's not going to work for most. Because most don't want to just be people sitting in a government apartment for the rest of their lives being lazy. You know what I mean? Most people actually want to try stuff and do stuff and, you know what I mean, start stuff and have it fail and then try something else and do that, you know, that entrepreneur spirit, that
Right.
American spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of us do. And that's what a lot of us want to do and will do. So I think all you can do is let the Democrats make their mistakes, let them do what they're going to do, and we just need to keep being a voice of reason and sanity for the people that will hear us and for the people that, you know, and also there's a lot to be said for, you know, getting older and getting some more life experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah, definitely.
it's like the old saying, you know, they say if you're not liberal in your 20s, then you don't have a heart, and if you're not conservative when you're older, then you don't have a brain. You know what I mean? That's a common saying I've heard before. And to a lot of extent it's very true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're 18, 20, 24, when you're very young like that, you have these
Mm-hmm.
ideas of, well, why can't things just work out? Why can't we just be
Right.
nice to everybody? Why can't we
yeah.
just, you know, like America is so wealthy. Why can't we just take care of the people that aren't doing well? And it
Mm-hmm.
starts out very reasonable, but it ends in a very bad place. And then, you know, you get a little older and a little more life experience, and you realize that that's just not the way the world works. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing you tell your kids whenever your kids have an idea that on paper might make sense or for whatever reason, but it's just not feasible, you know? And I think people don't hear enough of that these days. I think one of the things people don't hear enough of is that's just life. You know what I
Right.
mean? Or that's just not the way the world works. So that's going to about wrap it up for us today. If anything, we've gone a little long, but we had a lot to get to and a big show. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, it was fun as always.
Yeah. And so thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Peace.